Imagine watching a flawless, high-definition video of yourself committing a crime you absolutely never did. The voice, the mannerisms, the lighting, all perfectly matched, yet entirely generated by a cold server in under 3 seconds. We always feared the ultimate censorship would be the elite burning books to violently silence the truth. We were dead wrong. The most dangerous censorship today isn't silence. It is a relentless, synthetic flood of hyper-realistic lies designed to completely drown your sanity. Today, we expose how the system is seamlessly rewriting human history in real time, and why returning to a physical, analog life is the only lifeboat you have left. Imagine trying to find a real sharp needle in a massive haystack, but the twist is someone just dumped 10 million identical fake plastic needles right on top of it. You would honestly go absolutely crazy trying to sort through that mess, right? Well, that is exactly what the modern system is doing to our search for the truth today. We always pictured the ultimate censorship as some angry dictator burning physical books or pulling the plug on the internet. But it turns out the most brilliant way to hide a dangerous truth isn't to violently erase it from existence. Instead, you just drown it in an absolute, unrelenting ocean of flawless, incredibly loud noise. Think about how you feel when you are sitting in a packed, incredibly noisy restaurant and someone tries to whisper a secret across the table. You can see their lips moving perfectly, but the sheer volume of the crowd completely drowns out the message. The elite architects of this digital age realized that fighting human curiosity directly only creates stubborn martyrs. So, they changed the game entirely, deciding to open the floodgates of artificial data instead of locking the doors. They don't need to silence you if they can just overwhelm your organic senses with 1 billion gigabytes of hyper-realistic garbage. The truth is still technically out there, but it is completely buried under a heavy mountain of generated static. It is honestly kind of genius, in a very dark, twisted way, exactly like hiding a single drop of pure water inside a massive, raging, toxic river. If there is a video out there exposing a glitch in their system, they don't panic and delete it anymore. They just let their massive servers generate 10,000 perfect, fake variations of that exact same video within a single hour. It is a brilliant, terrifying digital heist happening right in front of our open eyes. Before you can even share the real evidence with your friends, the internet is flooded with contradictory angles and fake witnesses. You are left staring at your glowing screen, completely paralyzed, trying to figure out which drop of water is actually safe to drink. This relentless synthetic flood is specifically designed to attack our natural human limit for processing information. Our brains are beautifully organic, built to handle the steady, predictable pace of the real physical world around us. But when you hook that organic brain up to a fire hose of artificially generated content, the mental fuses just start to blow. You scroll through your feed and see a dozen different versions of reality, all looking equally polished and perfectly rendered. It is a highly calculated, intentional overload designed to completely break your investigative spirit. Eventually, your mind just throws its hands up in total surrender, unable to process the sheer volume of the chaotic noise. Think about trying to bake a perfect fluffy brownie cake, but someone keeps secretly dumping handfuls of cheap artificial sweeteners into your mixing bowl. No matter how good your original recipe was, the final result is going to be a confusing, chaotic mess that leaves a terrible taste in your mouth. That exact feeling of overwhelming frustration is what the new censorship relies on to keep your mind completely docile and confused. They want your daily feed so bombarded with synthetic opinions and hyper-realistic lies that you just stop caring about the truth altogether. It is a soft, comfortable tyranny where you are allowed to speak, but your voice is instantly swallowed by an algorithmic hurricane. You are technically free to search for the organic truth, but they have made the act of finding it an impossible, exhausting chore. But this brilliant strategy of drowning us in noise has a massive hidden side effect that is starting to deeply fracture our society. When we are constantly bombarded by this synthetic storm, our fundamental relationship with reality itself begins to aggressively crack and bleed. We start doubting everything, even the basic solid facts that we used to universally agree on just a few short years ago. The system is slowly and methodically training us to reject the physical world entirely in favor of their digital simulation. The flood doesn't just hide the truth, it actively erodes our natural, God-given ability to trust our own basic senses. And once you can no longer trust the very things you are seeing with your own two eyes, the real psychological terror truly begins. Think back to just a few short years ago, when editing a simple video required serious sweaty hours of human effort. You had to carefully adjust the lighting, painfully cut out the background noise, and wait forever for the computer to actually render the file. Gosh, it was a beautifully messy, frustrating, and incredibly organic process that left a genuine human fingerprint on the final product. But today, that entire physical struggle has been completely erased, handed over to a cold, unfeeling server that works at lightning speed. These massive machines can now flawlessly clone voices and generate hyper-realistic faces in the blink of an eye, requiring absolutely zero human soul. We are witnessing the terrifying death of visual evidence, where a simple click can entirely fabricate a reality that never actually existed. You see, our beautifully complex human brains were biologically wired over thousands of years to implicitly trust our own physical senses. If we saw a massive fire with our own two eyes or heard a loud scream, our organic instincts immediately told us it was completely real. Man, that deeply ingrained survival mechanism kept our ancestors alive, building a solid, unbreakable anchor to the natural world around us. But the architects of this synthetic flood have brilliantly figured out exactly how to hack that ancient biological trust code. By feeding us flawless, incredibly realistic deepfakes through our glowing screens, they are actively short-circuiting our natural ability to discern truth from fiction. They are literally breaking the oldest rule of human survival, turning our most reliable physical senses into our absolute biggest weakness. Imagine getting a highly emotional, perfectly crisp video call from a close friend asking for desperate, immediate help. Their voice cracks in that exact familiar way, and their facial expressions are absolutely identical to the person you have known for years. Your heart instantly drops into your stomach, and your natural human empathy screams at you to jump up and take action right away. But the terrifying reality is that your friend is actually perfectly fine, and you are just having a deeply emotional conversation with an algorithm. It honestly feels like the ultimate sickening betrayal when you realize a machine just flawlessly manipulated your deepest, most genuine human love. Once that sacred trust is violently broken, you can never look at a digital screen the exact same way ever again. The sheer scale of this visual manipulation is enough to make anyone feel like they are completely losing their grip on sanity. We used to jokingly say that seeing is believing, but in this new digital Babylon, seeing is honestly just the first step of the deception. The elite power players know that if they can successfully control the video feed, they can completely dictate the global narrative without firing a single shot. If a politician messes up or a historical event doesn't fit their corporate agenda, they just silently alter the footage in real time. You end up passionately arguing with your neighbors over a piece of video evidence that was entirely hallucinated by a corporate server. We are fighting fierce, exhausting battles inside a synthetic maze where the walls are constantly shifting and the proof is made of pixels. It is incredibly exhausting to live in a world where a high-definition video is no longer a solid, unshakable piece of physical evidence. You start looking at every single news clip, every viral moment, and every emotional speech with a heavy, deeply paranoid suspicion. Gosh, even when you are staring at the absolute truth, that tiny seed of artificial doubt has already been planted deep in your mind. The system doesn't necessarily need you to believe their specific, fabricated lie. They just need you to completely stop believing your own eyes. When the physical evidence is officially dead, the only thing left to trust is the algorithm that conveniently tells you what to think. They are forcefully severing our anchor to the physical world, leaving us drifting blindly in an ocean of flawless, synthetic illusions. As we slowly lose our biological ability to trust the screens we stare at all day, a profound spiritual starvation begins to set in. We are consuming more spectacular, visually stunning content than any other generation, yet we feel entirely empty and disconnected inside. It is exactly like drinking gallons of sparkling, brightly colored salt water when you are stranded in the middle of a hot desert. Your eyes are constantly being fed these beautiful, flawless visual banquets, but your organic soul is literally dying of malnutrition. The tragic irony is that while we are stuffing ourselves with this infinite, hyper-realistic buffet, our minds are actually starving to death. Because when the food on your plate is entirely made of invisible code, you have to wonder what exactly this synthetic diet is doing to your brain. Imagine walking up to a brightly lit bakery counter filled with the most gorgeous, mouth-watering brownie cakes you have ever seen. They look absolutely perfect, with that rich, fluffy texture and a glossy shine that just makes your stomach instantly rumble. But the moment you take a massive bite, you realize with horror that the entire pastry is actually made of painted styrofoam. It completely tricks your eyes and fills your empty stomach with useless air, making you feel temporarily full while your body continues to starve. Man, it is the ultimate culinary deception, offering the stunning visual promise of nourishment without delivering a single genuine calorie. Well, my friend, that exact same toxic trick is currently being played on your brain every single time you open your daily feed. We are currently consuming vastly more information in a single afternoon than our ancestors did in their entire beautiful lifetimes. You can endlessly scroll through thousands of deeply emotional stories, brilliantly written articles, and stunning works of art without ever hitting the bottom. But despite this massive, overflowing banquet of digital content, we are walking around as the most spiritually and intellectually starved generation in history. The system has flooded our plates with an infinite supply of hyper-realistic, AI-generated content that looks incredibly profound, but is entirely hollow inside. We are gorging ourselves on a synthetic diet of artificial data, desperately trying to satisfy a deep, organic hunger that a machine simply cannot feed. It is honestly heartbreaking to watch millions of people waste away spiritually, while sitting right in the middle of a fake digital feast. You see, genuine human wisdom and breathtaking art are fundamentally born out of real, messy friction, tears, and lived experience. When a real person writes a story or paints a picture, they are pouring a tiny, vulnerable piece of their actual soul into that creation. But a cold, unfeeling algorithm doesn't have a soul to share, so it just flawlessly mimics the outer shell of human emotion without the substance. It generates perfectly structured poetry and flawless philosophical quotes that hit all the right keywords, but carry absolutely zero spiritual weight. Gosh, it is like trying to draw warmth from a brilliantly painted picture of a fire. It looks hot, but you will still freeze to death. This endless synthetic flood provides zero actual nutritional value for your mind, leaving your inner temple completely malnourished and weak. The architects of this digital Babylon know perfectly well that keeping you stuffed with fake digital calories makes you incredibly docile. When your brain is constantly bloated with cheap artificial dopamine hits from scrolling, you completely lose your natural appetite for anything real or challenging. You stop craving the heavy, deeply satisfying meat of a physical book or the slow, beautiful complexity of a real human conversation. Why would you do the hard, sweaty work of digesting difficult truths when the system spoon-feeds you perfectly synthesized, sweet little lies all day? It is the exact same toxic mechanism as a severe junk food addiction, slowly destroying your natural palate until you can only tolerate artificial flavors. You are technically awake, but your mind is functioning in a state of severe intellectual famine, completely pacified by the illusion of abundance. As you continue to binge on this flawless, soulless digital content, your natural human discernment begins to rapidly decay. You become so accustomed to the smooth, perfectly edited rhythm of AI-generated reality that the messy, unpolished nature of the real world starts to feel wrong. The genuine, rough edges of organic human interactions begin to annoy you because they don't match the flawless, frictionless standard of the simulation. You are actively being trained to prefer the beautiful lie over the ugly truth, trading the rich, unpredictable clay of existence for sterile plastic. Man, the system doesn't need to burn the libraries if it can just successfully convince you to willingly feast on garbage instead. They have successfully monetized our spiritual starvation, keeping us hooked on a feeding tube that never actually sustains us. Living on this extreme synthetic diet eventually takes a brutal, unforgiving toll on your delicate biological hardware. Your organic brain is working in absolute overdrive, desperately trying to extract real meaning and emotional fuel from billions of empty digital calories. It's like running a complex, high-performance engine on cheap, watered-down gasoline. Eventually, the entire system is going to violently sputter and stall. You wake up feeling incredibly heavy, foggy, and profoundly drained, even though you technically didn't do anything physical all day long. This constant, desperate search for genuine connection inside a sterile simulation creates an invisible, crushing weight on your psyche. And when your mind is finally pushed to the absolute brink of starvation, a deeply terrifying kind of exhaustion begins to take over. Imagine driving home in the dead of night through a terrifying, blinding rainstorm after working a brutal 12-hour shift. You are desperately gripping the steering wheel, your knuckles completely white, squinting through the windshield just to find the painted lines on the road. For the first hour, you are hyper-focused, fighting the heavy rain and the blinding headlights of oncoming traffic with everything you have. But eventually, the sheer, relentless strain of staying on high alert starts to deeply fry your exhausted nervous system. Your heavy eyelids begin to aggressively droop, and you catch yourself wanting to just let go of the wheel and accept whatever happens next. Well, my friend, that exact same terrifying level of pure mental exhaustion is what the digital flood is actively doing to your brain right now, Phi. We often forget that the simple act of doubting something actually requires a massive amount of physical caloric energy from your body. Whenever you look at a video and actively try to figure out if it is a deep fake or the real deal, your brain is working in absolute overdrive. It is literally burning through your limited daily fuel to cross-reference facts, analyze weird shadows, and listen for those subtle synthetic glitches in the audio. Now try doing that intense mental gymnastics for thousands of different videos, articles, and audio clips every single time you pick up your phone. Gosh, it is no wonder we are walking around feeling completely drained and sluggish, practically begging for a nap by 2 in the afternoon. The system doesn't need to physically fight you if they can just bankrupt your daily energy supply before you even leave the house. The elite architects of this digital Babylon understand human biology perfectly, and they are brilliantly weaponizing our natural limits against us. They know that if they just keep relentlessly pounding your mind with hyper-realistic illusions, your biological defense systems will eventually just crash. You see, the ultimate goal of the synthetic flood isn't necessarily to convince you that a specific, fabricated lie is the gospel truth. It is simply to wear you down so heavily that you completely lose the will to keep digging for the organic reality hidden underneath. Man, it is a psychological war of attrition, and they have infinite server farms while you only have a finite amount of mental stamina. When you are absolutely starved for energy, your brain naturally looks for the path of least resistance just to survive the day. Once you reach that dangerous, critical level of deep cognitive burnout, something incredibly dark happens to your fierce human independent cell. You completely stop questioning the chaotic narrative and simply start accepting whatever comfortable, convenient truth the algorithm decides to spoon-feed you. It honestly hurts way too much to keep fighting the current, so you just close your tired eyes and let the digital river carry you away. You blindly click accept on their terms, nod along with the synthetic news anchors, and let the hive mind do the heavy lifting for you. It is the ultimate, quiet surrender of your sovereign soul, trading your God-given free will for a few moments of artificial peace. You become a perfectly passive, obedient node in their massive network, too mentally depleted to ever pose a threat to the establishment. They brilliantly make this absolute surrender feel like a sweet, comforting relief instead of the terrifying psychological prison that it actually is. They softly whisper that you don't need to stress yourself out trying to figure out the complex world because the AI can just think for you. It is incredibly tempting to just hand over the heavy burden of critical thought to a cold machine that never, ever gets tired. But the second you give up the painful, beautiful struggle of finding the truth yourself, you completely lose your grip on reality. You might think you are still making your own choices, but you are really just choosing from a pre-approved menu designed by your captors. Heck, you are essentially paying them with your attention to slowly rock your fierce, investigative spirit into a permanent digital coma. When your critical thinking is finally put to sleep and your energy is entirely drained, the system has total, undisputed access to your mind. You become so incredibly passive that you don't even notice when the fundamental rules of the world start shifting right in front of your eyes. Because if nobody has the energy left to actively defend the truth of the present, then nobody is going to protect the truth of the past either. You are too tired to argue, too exhausted to check the physical records, and too overwhelmed to trust your own fading memories. The solid, unchangeable facts of history suddenly become incredibly vulnerable to the cold, calculating edits of a corporate server. And when the architects realize that no one is watching the timeline anymore, they start doing something absolutely unthinkable to our collective memory. Imagine if every single history book in the world was like a massive online video game connected to a central server. During the dead of night, while you are fast asleep, the developers quietly push a massive software update to the cloud. You wake up the next morning, grab your coffee, and discover that the fundamental rules of the game have completely changed overnight. The crazy part is that the past events of the game, the things you vividly remember doing yesterday, have been entirely rewritten. Man, that is exactly what happens when we foolishly trust massive tech corporations to host our entire human history on their servers. Our collective memory is no longer carved into solid stone. It has been violently transformed into highly volatile liquid data. For decades, they slowly convinced us that keeping physical photo albums and heavy paper files was just an outdated, clunky burden. They sweetly offered us infinite free cloud storage, promising that our precious memories would be perfectly safe in their invisible digital vaults. But the terrifying catch they never mentioned is that whoever physically owns the server has absolute, undisputed control over your past. When all of our cultural memory is strictly hosted on their glowing hard drives, the past simply ceases to be a solid, unshakable fact. It quietly becomes just another piece of digital clay that can be seamlessly remolded to fit whatever narrative the elite want today. Gosh, it is literally the ultimate magic trick, making the heavy truth disappear without leaving a single trace of physical evidence behind. The synthetic flood doesn't just drown the present, it actually flows backward to completely alter the landscape of our human history. If a certain historical figure suddenly becomes inconvenient to the modern corporate agenda, they do not need to publicly ban their books. They just quietly run a silent algorithm that flawlessly edits that person out of digital photographs and alters their historical quotes. You can frantically search the internet to prove your point, but every single digital encyclopedia has already been updated to the new lie. It is honestly chilling to realize that a machine can seamlessly erase an entire human legacy in a fraction of a millisecond. The evidence of the organic truth is completely wiped clean, leaving you desperately questioning your own fading physical memories. This liquid past creates a deeply terrifying form of global gaslighting, where you are constantly told your memories are just flat out wrong. You might vividly remember a major global event happening a certain way, perhaps because you literally watched it unfold on live television. But a few years later, the official digital archive shows a completely different, highly edited version of that exact same event. When you try to argue with the hive mind, they just point to the corrupted digital screens as absolute, undisputed proof of their lie. It is incredibly exhausting, and eventually people just stop fighting and accept the newly downloaded version of reality just to survive the day. We are practically handing over the keys to our own sanity, allowing a cold algorithm to dictate what we actually experienced. The absolute genius of this real-time rewriting of history is that it leaves absolutely no physical footprints at the crime scene. When an evil dictator burned books in the public square, the terrifying smoke and the leftover ashes proved that a crime had occurred. But when a massive AI quietly overwrites 1 million digital records simultaneously, there is absolutely no smoke, no fire, and no warning alarm. The change is so flawlessly smooth and silent that the vast majority of the connected population doesn't even notice the shift. Man, you simply wake up to a brand new past, completely unaware that the very foundation of your reality was just updated. They are stealing our organic history right from under our noses, replacing it with a sterile, mathematically perfect corporate fiction. If the digital network has the absolute power to silently delete your past, it inevitably has the power to delete your future. Living in a world where the past is completely liquid means that nothing digital can ever be truly trusted or held sacred again. The only things that will actually survive this terrifying synthetic flood are the heavy physical objects that simply cannot be hacked. We are rapidly approaching a critical breaking point where trusting the cloud is no longer just a privacy risk. It is a spiritual death sentence. If you want to protect your sanity and preserve the true history of your family, you have to completely change your strategy. Because when the heavy floodwaters finally rise to completely wash away the digital illusion, you are going to need a very real, solid boat. When a massive, terrifying flood is rushing straight toward your house, you obviously do not stand in the yard trying to hold back the raging water with your bare hands. That would honestly be absolutely insane, yet that is exactly what we do when we try to fight the digital hive mind entirely from within their own network. You cannot outsmart a supercomputer using the exact same glowing screen it uses to actively manipulate your brain. The only logical, sane way to survive a massive flood is to build a heavy, physical boat made of real, solid wood that naturally floats above the chaos. My friend, the ultimate resistance against this synthetic digital deluge isn't writing angry online comments. It is actively building a modern analog arc. We have to radically pivot back to the physical world, deeply anchoring ourselves to things that a corporate server can never quietly hack or erase. This urgent return to analog living is not just some quirky, nostalgic fetish for the good old days of cassette tapes and vintage cameras. It is literally the most crucial, hardcore survival strategy of our modern era, an absolute necessity for protecting your God-given sanity. Think about the beautiful, heavy reality of a physical paper book resting completely solid in your hands right now. That beautiful stack of bound paper is incredibly powerful because it cannot be secretly updated, edited, or completely wiped out during a 3 a.m. software patch. Once the ink dries on that page, the organic truth is permanently locked in, completely immune to the silent gaslighting of the digital algorithm. Gosh, it is honestly incredibly freeing to hold a piece of history that doesn't need a Wi-Fi connection to prove it actually exists. We need to start fiercely treating our family memories like the irreplaceable, priceless treasures they actually are. You cannot just casually leave the only photos of your children's faces floating in a vulnerable corporate cloud, just waiting to be swallowed by a sudden glitch or an AI deepfake. Print them out, put them in a heavy, dusty photo album, and lock them in a physical drawer where absolutely no algorithm can ever reach them. A physical Polaroid might slowly fade over a few decades, but a machine will never suddenly swap out your grandfather's face with a generated stranger. Man, having tangible evidence of your own life story is the absolute ultimate shield against a system that wants to completely rewrite your reality. When the screens eventually start lying to you, that dusty box of family photos in the basement becomes your only undeniable proof of existence. The same exact rule applies to how we actually communicate and share our deepest, most vulnerable secrets with the people we love. If you are sending your most private thoughts through a digital messaging app, you are basically screaming your secrets into a heavily monitored corporate microphone. We have to completely rediscover the beautiful lost art of looking someone dead in the eye and speaking the raw truth in a quiet, physical room. A genuine, messy, face-to-face conversation over a cup of hot coffee cannot be cloned, intercepted, or subtly manipulated by an artificial intelligence. It is a deeply sacred, closed-loop transaction of human energy that the hive mind absolutely hates because it cannot monetize or control it. Gosh, there is simply no digital substitute for the chaotic, beautiful friction of two physical human beings sharing the exact same breathing space. Building your personal arc also means actively cultivating physical skills that do not require a glowing screen or a battery to function. If the digital grid goes down tomorrow, or if your digital identity gets locked out, knowing how to code a website isn't going to feed your family. You need to know how to plant a real seed in real dirt, how to fix a physical engine, or how to bake a loaf of bread with your own 2 hands. These gritty, analog skills ground you incredibly deep in the physical reality, reminding your body that you are a sovereign creator, not just a passive consumer. The elite tech billionaires want you completely helpless and dependent on their digital convenience, practically begging them for your basic daily needs. But a human being who actually knows how to survive in the dirt is a human being who can never be fully blackmailed by the cloud. We are rapidly running out of time to gather our physical wooden nails before the synthetic floodwaters reach the absolute point of no return. The digital noise is getting louder and more flawless every single day, aggressively trying to convince you that the physical world is just an outdated burden. But deep down, your beautifully organic soul already knows that the sterile, pixelated utopia they are selling is nothing but a high-tech graveyard. You can either choose to stay plugged into the matrix and drown in their endless artificial lies, or you can start building your unhackable sanctuary right now. The rain is already starting to fall, and the heavy drops are quietly hitting the window pane of your consciousness. So as the digital water level slowly creeps higher and higher up the walls of reality, you have to ask yourself what your final move is going to be. The digital water level is already rising incredibly fast, and that deep, heavy exhaustion you feel every single time you look at a glowing screen is your organic soul warning you that you are running out of breath. You cannot successfully fight this synthetic flood by trying to outswim it inside their own corrupted, algorithmic network. It is time to radically change your life, completely unplug from their endless matrix of artificial noise, and start building your physical ark today. Start printing out your precious family photos, buy hard copies of the books that actually matter, and fiercely prioritize real, messy, face-to-face conversations over cheap digital convenience. Are you genuinely willing to trade the irreplaceable, organic truth of your own existence just to stay comfortable inside a fake digital simulation? I want you to look around your room right now and make a hard, conscious choice. Tell me down in the comments below, what is the very first physical book, analog photograph, or real-world skill you are going to put into your personal ark to protect your family's true history from the cloud? I'm going to be reading and interacting with your answers, because this is exactly how we build the physical resistance together. If you are finally ready to completely reject this digital deluge and fight for your sovereign mind, you need to subscribe to the Hidden Prophecy channel right now. Make absolutely sure you hit that notification bell so you never miss a piece of the puzzle as we continue to expose their system. Close your tabs, protect your physical reality, stay completely human, and I will see you in the next investigation.